clothes. Not who touched me. Again, she did her job. Just as clothes. Who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding around you, right? His disciples asked. I mean, they're like, Jesus, how are you going to even ask that question? Everybody's touching you. Everybody's touching. What do you mean? Who touched my clothes? His disciple answered, and yet you can ask who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around. Love that. He didn't take their answer. He kept looking around to see. Now remember, we did on Easter the God who sees me, right? If you didn't get that message, go back and look at it. It's online. I'll send it to you, whatever. But it's, do I see the God who sees me? Because, man, it'll change everything if you see him for who he is when he sees you. And he looks around and continues to look around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet. Now, did she start at his feet? No, she started from behind him, right? But after the miracle, it's not just her belief, it now is her healing, her being set free, leads her to fall at his feet, again, as one who has authority and one who has freed her. But she still trembled with fear. She told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Now there's faith involved at his feet. You can see why I might want to title it Feet Plus Faith. Starts at Jesus' feet, but then when faith kicks in, it transforms to your feet and what you do next. And she is to go into peace and walk in that without suffering, freed from suffering in that context. Now let me ask you this, because in verse 31, when the disciples ask, how can you ask who touched you? I want to again make all these stories very personal to where you are today, because it's about your belief, not Jairus's or this woman's that's not even named. Is what do you believe? Because what you believe will determine what you do next. And I want to not ask this carefully. I want to ask it to set you free. Can I do that? Give me permission real fast. Just say yes. Yes. Even though you don't know what's coming. Believe it's for your best and for your good. I believe there's a lot of people who come to church to try and touch Jesus with no expectation of change. I believe that there are people just like the crowds in this day and time who were crowding around Jesus, actually touching Jesus, and not being set free from their suffering. They weren't just touching his clothes. Man, can you imagine? Just think of the celebrity. I'm just trying to pat him on the back. I just want to reach out and touch his hand. Hey, reach your hand out to me. Jesus, touch my hand. I'll never wash that hand again. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. They're touching him, but with no expectation of change. They just want to be a part of the process. Are you just here to see Jesus? Or are you desperate to know Jesus? There's a difference. And it's based on your belief. It's based on your belief. And when I come into this place, or I come into this word, or on Tuesday morning when I sit at my desk and I listen to Stephen Furtick, I'm actually trying to meet with Jesus in a deep and intimate way. And I expect him to change my life every week from that moment on. You know how I know I expect it? I never do it without a pen and a notebook and my Bible open. Ever. If I didn't expect any change, I would just have Stephen on. I'll just listen. That's me. Because I'd go about my day and I'd hear some of it. Oh, that was good. That was neat. I got maybe a quote and I can share that. But I need to change. I don't need a quote. I need to change. I'm desperate on a daily basis. And so when I come with an open Bible, my pen and my notebook. There's a date on the top of the page. There's a scripture, and then there's the title. Now, here's the deal. My notes may or may not be Stephen's sermon, but there's always notes. Does that make sense? This message has almost zero of Stephen's sermon. but it flowed as fast. Here's the mess of it. This is what it looked like to start with. This is what it looked like when I tried to share it to you with a little bit more continuity. But it came so fast. It's over here, it's underlined there, it's marked out there, it's written up here. Does that make sense? It was just, okay, Lord, I need to know. I'm desperate. So let me ask you, when you come to Scripture, are you desperate? Because if you're desperate to reach out and touch him, I promise he will touch you with power. He will touch you with power. And he will set you free from your suffering. But you've got to expect something when you come to him. You can't just hope he's going to pass by and you'll feel better about yourself that day. There was hundreds that day. And you're going to see in a minute, they just get left behind ultimately, and they receive nothing. So what do you expect when you come? To see him or to know him? Let me ask you this in another way. Do you let him touch you with power and freedom? Or do you just keep him at arm's length? Because that's a difficulty I found early in my Christian life. You know how I learned I could rate that? I was in seminary at the time preparing to do ministry. And I could real easily determine whether I was resisting what God was trying to change in me or not. Because he was getting close. I mean, I'm in these classes with these guys who know 10,000 times more than I do. And they're teaching me, and I've gotten, boy, things are changing, but there's only so much I want to change. You know, I'm 24, 23, whatever. I still got it figured out pretty well. You know what that measure was? It was my radio. Whenever I would turn off Christian music for me and turn on rock and roll, I knew I didn't want to hear what he had to say to me. I wanted change, but only to a certain extent. The rest of the time I was okay if he was about arm's length away. Don't change too much, Jesus. I still like my comfort. I still like my plan. I still like my ways. So do you come to him wanting him to touch you with power for freedom? Or do you come and try and keep him at arm's length away? You'll know your measure. Now, I'm going to tell you now, I don't have that issue anymore. I listen to rock and roll all the time. Because I come to him. Because I don't work very well to Christian music, I've learned, as far as trying to be out and be active. So rock and roll feeds my soul. It just is what it is. It's not a spiritual thing anymore, but it was then. I can tell you, I guarantee you it was then. And there were times I would literally tune him out for a month or two. Because I didn't want to deal with what he was trying to tell me I needed to deal with. Okay? So will you come to him and let him? And then here's the great thing, and we talked about testimony last week. Eventually, he demands she share her testimony of what has happened in her life. I think Christ requires that of all of us if you read Scripture. We are to overcome by the word of his testimony, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony. We are to physically share what he has done in our lives, but so many of us just come wanting to receive and not wanting to go out and share. And I think in some ways, because of her shame or whatever situation she may have been told for years, this exists a lot of times in the New Testament. The philosophy of the day was, if you were sick, you had sin. And if you didn't have sin, your parents had sin, and that's why you were born like this in these situations. Scripture does not back that up, but that was the theology of the time. And so maybe she had just felt like, man, I'm never going to be worthy. No matter what I do, I still feel sick. But she had a belief enough that this man can change me. This man can heal me. This man can set me free. That I don't want anybody else to know about it. But I'm gonna take the risk. I'm just going to see what happens. Oh, man, I just felt that change in me. Let's see if I can slip away. Hey, who touched me? A little faster. Hey, who touched, in that process, who touched me? And it says, did you see it in Scripture? Finally. I mean, she did not want to do this and be exposed for what she had been so shamed for so many years, even though now had been set free and had been healed. She was still afraid. But she said, it's me. And it says she told her whole story. Did you catch that? Doesn't say, oh, I touched you. Thanks, Jesus. Have a good day. She told her whole story. Jesus, I touched you because I have suffered with this for. I am desperate in this situation. I just hope maybe by touching your cloak I could be healed. And what is his response? Daughter, come here, man. Forget the crowd for a second. Daughter. Now Jairus has a daughter that's dying. Did you forget where we started this story? In the middle of all this, dying. But Jesus takes time. Do you know that most ministry happens in the interruptions? For me as a pastor, I guarantee you, the most meaningful ministry happens in the interruption. It happens with the thing I didn't expect. It happens with the word I didn't mean to say. It just came out. Does that mean in a positive way? I will have people years later go, man, when you told me that, it changed my life. Do you remember that? No, not at all. That's the Spirit's word, not my word. It's his word that goes beyond me. Does that make sense? So anyway, in this, we got to get on because we got to get back to Jairus here. But she had to tell. I am telling you, there's a belief that should be in you that I should be telling what God is doing. But we have worked it out in our churches. And we've criticized it sometimes and even shamed it because there's been so many either false testimonies or because of jealousy based on somebody else's testimony. There's criticism. I know that. I feel it. And I'll tell, oh, well, you this and this, and how do you think? I don't know. I'm just telling you what happened. Well, he doesn't work that way for me. Well, sucks to be you. Sometimes you should try harder. I don't know. But I'm like, what am I supposed to say to that? Keep seeking? Fill in this gap? Does that make sense? Let your belief build on something? Grow to maturity? Stay in the Word? Claim the promises? Reach out more? I don't know what to tell you, but I know so often we have quit testifying. Jesus demands we testify. And I want to find out ways to do it more in here, and we may figure that out, but it's the word of our testimony that lets people know that he set us free and that they can be free as well. And if I believe that they can be freed as well, I'll share more often. Does that make sense? So in that context, let's go ahead. All right, that was just freebie. All right. While Jesus was still speaking, some men came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter's dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? I think that tells more about what they believe than any other sentence in this. What do they believe? I'll just fill in for the sake of time. They believe that Jairus may have overstepped his bounds, I think. He's going to this Jesus guy for help. Okay, you've been a bother enough. Why don't you quit bothering him and just come back home? Come back to the synagogue. Come back to what you've known. Just quit bothering him. They believe that Jesus can't raise the dead. Okay? That's what they believe, right? Because they say, well, when she was sick, Jairus, you might as well take a shot at it. See if something happens, why not? Take the three-pointer. See if you can make it win the game, whatever that is. But now that you missed your chance, she's dead. We should just leave him to his ministry and his business and to the crowds. They believe he's concerned more about the crowd than he is about the individual. They believe all kinds of things, right? And they literally, because of their belief, say, stop. Jairus, stop. Just stop. Stop, Jairus. God doesn't care anymore. Jairus, quit asking. Nothing's going to change. Jairus, it's over. Leave the man alone. Just stop. But Jesus, what's his response to that? Jesus says he ignores them, basically. He ignores what they say. And he says to Jairus, the synagogue ruler, don't be afraid, just believe. Don't be afraid, just believe. And I'm going to ask you, and I know my time's about done, but I'm going to steal a few moments from you because this is necessary. Or maybe we can take it next week. I'll pray about that as I talk to you real fast. There's a whole other sermon at the end of the sermon, I promise you. what is Jairus supposed to believe? I mean, I think it's interesting. Now, if you look at in Luke again, I think it says, Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe that I can heal. Well, that doesn't matter anymore, does it? Because she's dead. But in this account by Mark, which they believe is the first account, and Luke and Matthew took from Mark's account and recounted it for themselves, it just says, don't be afraid. Just believe. Believe what? I mean, really, believe what? Believe in me. Believe that I am who I say I am. Believe that I am living water. Believe that I am the bread who came down from heaven. Believe that I am still working. Believe that I have a plan and a purpose. Believe that all things work together for good of those who love me and are called according to my purpose. Believe I love you. Now, he doesn't go into all that, does he? He just says, hey, Jairus, we're going to ignore them. We're going to ignore them. I need you to not be afraid right now. I know you were desperate, now you're afraid. I need you to not be afraid, I just need you to believe. And Jairus' belief in what Jesus says leads into the next thing. And it really does end very quickly, so I'm going to try and do this quickly. And let me tell you, don't get too caught up in the details of what's supposed to happen next when you believe. Do your best to just walk and keep in step with Jesus. Because it really doesn't matter what it does. Because what you believe will determine what you do next. But the disciples believed and didn't understand. It didn't stop God from doing what God was going to do and then bringing them along in the process. So it comes in, and here's what I want you to do real fast if I can. And I'm just going to go on the bottom of this. And I need you to hear this, and I'm going to set you free today, okay? You need some building blocks of faith. And you need some of those centralized beliefs that are unshakable, unchangeable, cannot waver, cannot crack, will stand whatever else happens. And what I mean by these building blocks of belief is I believe those things I just said. God cares about me. I'm not to cast my care. I believe He is God, and I am not. I believe that He is sovereign and has a purpose and a plan. When I can't understand it, no matter how much searching I do, I won't understand it. I just choose to believe He's sovereign and He's God and He has a purpose and a plan. Now, I'm going to put in belief with that it's all going to work out for good for those who are called according to His purpose, because that's what His promise and His plan says is going to happen. I believe that He is one who's going to hold all this together. I believe that He loves me. If you have those belief building blocks, then when things come into your life that you do not understand, it's okay, because you know where you're still going to stand. Does that make sense? God, I don't understand, but I do know this. And so because of these foundational building blocks, I'm not going to waver. I'm not going to be taught. I believe you died for me. I believe you set me free from the suffering that Satan intended. I believe you forgave me of my sins. I believe you're going to come back again and restore your people into yourself. I believe our dwelling is going to be with our Father. Does that make sense? And so then that which I don't understand doesn't shake me, because I have a foundation on which I am standing. So at least get your foundation blocks. Now, with that in mind, I got two more things for you real fast. He did not let anyone follow Him. Don't be afraid, just believe. He didn't let anyone else follow Him except Peter, James, and John. In other words, the people who came from Jairus' house were told to stay. You don't get to come any farther. You don't get to be in his ear. You don't get to share any more of your unbelief. We are not stopping. We are moving forward. You stay. The rest of you disciples, how about you minister to this crowd here? Because the crowd doesn't get to come either. They're going to stay. Jairus, just you, me, Peter, James, and John are going back to your house to deal with the rest of this. The crowd is put aside. When they came to the home of the synagogue ruler, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead but asleep." But they laughed at him. They didn't believe, did they? They laughed, mocked him, mocked Jesus to his face. In the household of their authority, Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Anyway, I love this next sentence, and really this was the download that came on Tuesday that has the whole reason I'm doing this message, so please listen closely. After he put them out, he took the child's father and mother and disciples and went with him, and they went to the room where the child was. Can I ask you this question today, and I mean it with all of my heart? Who do you need to put out of your life who is causing you not to believe? Now, I am not saying abandon them, but I am saying for the time for God to work in your life right now, who do you need to put out? Who's in your ear saying, don't bother Jesus anymore with that? Don't bother God with that. He doesn't care. Who's in your ear laughing at what God has told you as a promise? That he is the resurrection and the life, but they're laughing at you. He put them out. The crowds he left behind. The other disciples he left behind. The household people who came from Jairus he left behind. The people in the house mourning for the daughter he put out. We're not going to allow this here. We're going to go into this room with Peter, James, and John, and Mom and Dad. You believe? You believe? Good. Everybody else is out now. Who do you need to put out? I don't know who that message is for. It's for somebody in this room. Who do you need to put out? There's somebody. Just say, God, I need you right now. I'm desperate. I need you right now. I'm desperate. Touch me. I'll touch you. I'm just desperate. God, I'm calling out to you. But then here's what's happening. And here's the second part of that. Once you put him out, it says, he took her by the hand, touched her, and said, Talitha cum, which means little girl. I say to you, get up. Immediately, the girl stood up, walked around, and she was 12 years old. Now here's the other side of it. Once you tell them to get out, what do you need to stand up? What do you need to stand up in your life? What do you need Jesus to speak over and say, it was dead, but I need you to give it life. It was gone. It could be my hope. It could be my faith. It could be my strength. It could be my confidence. But God, I need it to stand up. And I'm going to tell you this. Whatever it is that you feel like needs to be told to stand up, tell yourself first. Because that's who Jesus is going to be dealing with. So it's your confidence that needs to stand up. It's your hope that needs to stand up. It's your faith and belief system that needs to stand up. It's that which Christ is placing in you, his power, because he's chosen to touch you today through his word, that is going to set you free and stop the suffering and the bleeding. So whatever it is, when I say, what do you need to stand up? Or think, tell yourself first, stand up. Stand up. He cares for me. He loves me. I believe it. I believe he has a plan. I believe he has a purpose. So therefore, I can walk into whatever situation and circumstance I face.